MonsterTech is doing a giveaway on my channel. Stay tuned for details on how you can win. Hello everybody, this is Oddjob Entertainment bringing you another video. And today we're going to talk about character and story progression in Star Citizen. And we all know that Squadron 42 will have our character fighting in a galactic campaign against some alien threats and probably some bandit factions as well. I imagine that like many games that feature a single-player campaign, Squadron 42 will set the stage for the overarching theme that will permeate the multiplayer. As a heads up, this is going to ignore a lot of what is established currently as the progression in Star Citizen, making a lot of adjustments to make gameplay more impactful. And keep that in mind, because what I hope to present is just one possibility of progression for characters in Star Citizen. One possible outcome of the campaign, for instance, could have our character as a retired veteran of a successful initiative in pushing back the Vanduul threat. But as any cinematic or game experience tells us, this piece is only temporary. In much the same way as the opening scene of A New Hope sets the stage for the trilogy, the single-player campaign establishes the threat that continues to be a problem in the multiplayer. When audiences first saw Leia's ship pursued by the massive Star Destroyer, the awesome power of the Empire was apparent without a word of dialogue. But then, after that peek behind the curtain, we're taken to Tatooine?
But I was going into Tosche Station to pick up some power converters!
Where the effects of the war are less obvious, and Luke's days are consumed with seemingly mundane chores compared to the conflict we just saw. So imagine that our character is now trying to make a living outside their military service. The pension they receive is enough to buy some basic supplies, but it's not enough to finance a ship or a spacesuit. Our character starts off eking out a living in one of the careers nearby as an FPS miner for the local guild, or maybe as a farmhand for the neighbor's farming operation. They're on a planet with a breathable atmosphere with no access yet to spacesuits or the prohibitively expensive spacecrafts. This initial chapter serves to teach any players that skipped the campaign the basics of FPS gameplay. But it also serves to teach any players that did finish the campaign new mechanics that they wouldn't have been exposed to. On the first day of mining, for instance, the general manager hands you a multi-tool and remarks, "You ever use one of these?" You reply, "Not for mining, but it can't be too different from slicing locks, right?" The minerals you mine there are low value, but enough that after a couple hours, you have enough credits to get yourself a ground vehicle. And this makes the trip to the city center much less of a hassle. And this is good, because you've already had a run-in with one of the local gangs, so you're eager to get out of there. In Star Wars, when Luke and Ben get to Mos Eisley, it's another peek behind that curtain. There's scum and villainy all over. There's a wanted man.
I have the death sentence on 12 systems.
I'll be careful.
There's pilots who have been across the galaxy seeing the sights. As part of the audience, we see again that there's a lot more going on than what Luke is able to show us. It's at this point that Luke and Ben contract Han Solo and Chewbacca and quickly find themselves entwined with that larger galactic conflict. Luke at this point is still trying to rescue his hot sister, who he thinks he might have a chance with romantically. As we all know, the trilogy wasn't totally written by the time the trilogy started to come out. In Star Citizen, the first time you get to the city center, maybe that's the first time you see another player touching down in a Hull C delivering bulk goods. This would be about the only type of player that has any initiative to come so far into the safe green zone. And at the city center, you have access to other jobs that take you to different locations. With your military background, you're a shoo-in for an engineering position at the Crusader shipyards. You make enough money at this new job that you're able to kit yourself with a rifle, and if you're extremely daring, you can take on a bounty contract for a group of Ninetales on one of the many floating platforms. You're now making enough to buy weapons, but not enough to buy a set of armor yet. Those are still very expensive. And it's here that we have to talk about some major economic adjustments and gameplay changes to make progression a reality in Star Citizen. A lot of things will need to be quite a bit more expensive, and first off is spacesuits. That classic white undersuit would of course be the least expensive, but it also has the least benefits and offers zero protection. But you might say, well, I'll just loot something better off those Ninetales. That's a great idea. Except that, assuming combat is happening on a quality server with high frame rates, the combat is extremely difficult and risky, especially without insurance. You'll be able to afford insurance in the future, but right now the cost of dying would set you into the negative. So dying is really a bad idea. But if you do succeed, the The loot you'd get is very low in durability and doesn't offer much protection relative to the effort you went to in getting it, much like the armor looted off of mobs in Minecraft. You can repair it, sure, but that still requires access to funds that you don't have yet. But all these limitations are made known to the player so that they can start to see the ways they'll be progressing. For the time being, though, you might be better off sticking with the grind for a bit longer. And while doing one of these Ninetale bounty missions, staying stealthy so you don't get shot, you happen to find a key piece of evidence in a current criminal investigation. You report this to Crusader Security and they offer you a job as an investigator. If you accept, you'd gain access to a set of armor, a company ship for patrols, and weapons and gear for carrying out your missions. Importantly, this company ship is something like a Gladius and can't leave the star system, but it does give you access to the system at large. Again though, things would need to be quite expensive, and to get a more capable distance ship is going to cost you a pretty penny. But in grinding out the first of these patrol missions, you come across more NPCs and job opportunities to perhaps join a ship mining crew, be part of a cargo transportation network, and excitingly, there's an engineer position open on a galaxy that's offering humanitarian aid in the Pyra system. If you take that job, you see yourself taking care of the medical ship while it services victims of a conflict shrouded in mystery. The few injured that are lucid enough to speak mention seeing blade-like ships they'd never seen before, and it conjures images of your time in the war. But that's impossible. No way would the Vanduul fleet be able to pierce this far into Imperial space, and for what purpose? But as more victims are treated, it gains traction enough to demand investigation. If you go down this route, death is all but guaranteed, so you're advised to use part of your now greatly increased income to start paying for health insurance. And while you're in the Pyra system, the player starts to get a real sense of the community aspect of Star Citizen. They regularly see players in ships of their own taking on contracts both legal and less so. They touch base with players willing to take them on as a turret gunner. At this point, the player has enough resources to step off the Golden Path and pursue whatever they want with other players. But the Golden Path quest marker will still be there should they want to continue. At this point, we should address one of the many elephants in the room. What I've described up to now severely hampers the open sandbox that Star Citizen has been up to this point. It might seem antithetical to what Star Citizen is supposed to be, but Star Citizen is a game. And one aspect we are sorely lacking is any sense of progression that makes a game fun. If your players don't have something to work towards, they will stagnate and leave. That's part of why so many games adopt some kind of seasonal model. The infusion of new content keeps players coming back. But I also recognize that some players will not want to go through any kind of progression in the multiplayer just to gain access to ships they already own. I myself am going to want to fly my own galaxy if or when it ever comes out. To that, I think the simple solution is having multiple characters per account. I'd have my whale character and my progression character. Best of both worlds, and I can do with my resources whatever I please. And again, this is just one possible presentation of progression on the multiplayer side of things. But this illustrates the kind of framework that is necessary to make players connect to the story of the game and the mechanics therein. Having a story-like progression enables the developers to introduce mechanics to the players in a way that is not overwhelming, but rather gets them excited for what's to come. Maybe at some point on this journey, you find yourself running into a racing crew that offers to take you on. You gain access to the various racing circuits this way across the verse, and a roadmap is laid out on how you can climb those leaderboards. At another point, the Civilian Defense Force puts out a call to all able fighters to defend the Pyra system from a Vanduul incursion. These overarching story elements help to tie otherwise disjointed mechanics together and get you invested. And while I have my gripes about Destiny 2, this is exactly why they have their season pass structure and the story bits behind it. Over the past 7 years, we've gone from being the hero of the Red War, to avenging Cayde 6, to channeling darkness, embracing former foes, tapping into Strand powers, discovering Neomuna, and now we're preparing for a final confrontation against the Witness. Without this regular injection of content, Destiny would have frankly little to offer, as is the case with any game. Similarly, at the end of Episode 4, Luke has destroyed an entire space station. He is the hero of the rebellion and a name whispered in fearful tones by those in the Empire. But there is still much for him to learn.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
Eventually, he'll go on to be one of the greatest Force wielders ever known, but the rest of the trilogy takes us along for that continuing journey. Looking back, it's hard to believe he started out as a mere moisture farmer on a backwater planet.
But I was going into Tosche Station to pick up some power converters.
But that's the same promise that Star Citizen keeps making, that you can do whatever you want and carve a name for yourself. Having a robust story progression is how you enable players to do that. These story beats make it so that the player that wants to be a renowned racer has a track to do so, or someone wanting to be a ruthless bounty hunter would have their own path to pursue. These paths then get made to intertwine and intersect. Maybe that bounty hunter is sent after a racing circuit doing unsanctioned races through ArcCorp, thereby endangering the populace, and they need to be put to a stop. If we stick to the golden path, we might find our player recruited for the defense of Pyro alongside everyone else arriving at that point in the story. Server-wide event with the goal of repelling the Vanduul, pull everyone into the fray. But at the same time, if you want to ignore these events, you can. You can still make your own fun, but the story is there if you want it. I'd like to revisit this idea in future videos, but I'd also like to hear what you guys think for the next one. Is there anything you'd like to see as far as story progression in Star Citizen? How would you set up progression in a career field? And what kinds of rewards could come from climbing these ranks? With that said, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to an end of our video, but also the giveaway courtesy of MonsterTech. They are graciously donating a set of chair or desk mounts to one lucky viewer. All you have to do to have a chance to win is like and subscribe to my channel, and comment on any of the videos during the giveaway period with that video's corresponding secret word. Once we have 1,000 subscribers, we'll be doing a live drawing on stream, and we're getting really close, guys. There's probably only a couple more videos before we are actually finalizing this giveaway, which I am super stoked about. Not only is it a huge milestone for me, but it also represents a lot of dedication from you guys as my community. So I'm really happy to be able to have this opportunity to give back to you guys. MonsterTech is a great company. I've been a huge instant convert to their products ever since I got my chair, and the custom ordering process was great. They've also been, very supportive of my endeavors as a small creator, which I think is awesome. So it's a company that gives as much to the community as we give to them. So I'm really happy to be partnered with them, and I'm sure you're going to like the products that you get. If you are wanting to order something besides that chair desk mount that you could possibly win, there's a 5% off code down in the description. Just use code ODDJOB at checkout, and you'll get 5% off your whole order, which is another huge benefit courtesy of MonsterTech. So again, thanks MonsterTech for supporting me, and thank you guys for supporting me as well. I'm really excited to be able to give back to you guys. But I should probably give you a secret word to go off of, shouldn't I? Just let's keep the conversation going. We talked about player progression and how it could appear in Star Citizen. Let's talk about how you would do it. Is there anything that I missed? Is there anything that you think could be done better? Let's talk about it. But until next time, this is OddJob Entertainment, signing off.